Hey everyone, welcome back to Don't Be an Idiot, the podcast where I, Jamie, try to be funny and Chris is a fact-checking Jiminy Cricket. So Chris, I gotta ask you, you ever been to the Pacific Northwest?
I've been to almost every state except the Pacific Northwest. And my kid's been there and he says it's beautiful. It's
That's
amazing.
what I hear. I hear it is incredibly gorgeous.
I've watched a lot of Finding Bigfoot episodes, and so I kind of vicarious get the feel out of the place.
You feel like you've been there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think seen stuff on TV, but never been there. Got relatives there. Got relatives close to Mount St. Helens, but
Oh yeah? Let's hope that doesn't erupt again.
But with some of that stuff going on in Portland, you don't necessarily want to go there these days.
The home of hipsters and rain, you know?
Right, and Antifa and
Yeah, Antifa.
crazy politicians.
Yeah, crazy politicians,
Mhm.
crazy people. I mean, let's burn it down. If it doesn't make sense, let's burn it down, right?
Right. Unfortunately.
Yeah,
mhm.
But, so you hear like they have a huge budget shortfall, and they're blaming it on pretty much, the federal state of the economy or whatever.
The big beautiful bill.
The big beautiful bill, yeah.
Mhm.
It sounds like, the Trump, I don't know where he comes up with these names, but and frankly, it's just more funny than anything. I think he's like, oh, big beautiful bill, ha 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 ha.
Right.
But yeah.
Surprised it wasn't the biggest.
It's so big, it's huge, right?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
hear you.
Mhm.
I hear you. Everything's huge to that guy, right? But so federal taxes go down. Tax on tips goes down. And they start blaming the federal government for the problem, right?
Yeah, this is because they have a stupid law that ties their tax policy to the federal government's tax policy, which I don't know why they would do any of that. Why would anyone do that unless they're trying to get out of responsibility? Well, it's the taxes went up because it's the law that it's tied to the federal policy, and so they blame Washington, don't blame us. It's like, how ridiculous. I mean, it seems like a way of like getting out of any responsibility for your own state's tax policy. I mean, why would you want to do that? I mean, you're Oregon. You're not the rest of the country. And the idea of the country is that we have all these little micro centers throughout the whole country. Sure. And they do their own thing.
Isn't that kind of like, you cheat off of this guy's homework and then all of a sudden, he flunks and you flunk and you
complain about it.
Yeah, you complain about it, right? It's not my fault. I cheated off of him, right?
Right. And so now you were telling me that Oregon, especially because of no tax on tips and some of the other tax deductions, so Oregon is getting less revenue because their tax policy is to do whatever the feds do. And so
is this the rolling reconnect? I guess I don't understand that.
Yeah, that's what they say, right? The rolling reconnect policy.
Sounds like something you'd get at sushi or something like that.
Should be called shank any responsibility for proper public policy.
Pass it on, right?
Exactly. Blame the other guy.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, when my taxes go up, it's your fault, Chris.
Right, exactly. So the the general fund. So here's something that says Oregon's general fund spending has grown dramatically in recent years, up nearly 40% over the past decade. So obviously that's not very. Spending's not tied to federal policy, obviously.
Right. 40%.
40%.
So you've raised everything 40%, but it's somehow the Fed's problem with that, right?
Right, exactly. Because your spending didn't go up. The spending should go down if the taxes are going down.
Right. Why don't we cut something out of this,
they
right?
Should tie them both
but
together.
even with that, what is it? 888 million that they're going to shortfall, and they had a cushion of already $472 million.
Right.
So it's like, I mean, at what point are we going to point the finger where it should be pointed, right?
And that's such a problem. I mean, it's a global problem for a lot of governments these days. I mean, all these governments, especially since COVID, they've been deficit spending. It's like they can't stop printing money. And so, right now there is a weird thing going globally, and economies that a lot of people are cash rich, but the governments are cash broke, but they can't stop spending. It's just like this whole government shutdown thing where they're talking about, well, until we approve extra subsidies for Obamacare, we're not going to. The Democrats don't want to open up the government again.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so we're gonna, and then they'll be the first people to say,
I thought this was a Republican shutdown.
Yeah, right. It's like, well, the Republicans have 50 plus one voting to keep the government open, but they need 60% of the Senate to stay open. So the Democrats are really controlling this because they have 45 people voting against it. So
45.
that's enough to keep it shut down.
Right.
So they can blame on the Republicans, but the Republicans under they are,
all voted for it.
Except for Rand Paul.
Okay.
But he's got other reasons. He wants spending to go down, obviously. But so anyways, all but one are in support of it, and so they brought their team. The Democrats need to bring their team. But the whole thing is that, so, we've been, in 2010, we were fed this line, Obamacare is going to control healthcare costs, and I even remember, he's like, in fact, you're going to save money by the American Affordability Care Act, which is bogus. Obviously, we all know you weren't able to keep your health plan. And I talk to some people, and they talk about having to pay $12,000 premiums. This is it just keeps going up and up and up. And now, because once COVID came around, they said, well, we got to subsidize it. And so, I can understand that in a certain way. People have serious pain. I think there are like 22 million people who are benefiting from these subsidies. But I think it's a perfect time to talk about, okay, we need to fix things instead of just keep spending. Because if you want to spend an extra $1 trillion on subsidies, why don't we also talk about, okay, which country do you want to borrow this money from? Right. Because we owe Japan, we owe China, we owe the
Federal
UK,
Reserve,
the Social Security Trust Fund. So we've got all these debtors. It's not like we have the cash sitting around. We're like, oh yeah, let's just grab it out of this pocket and throw it in. We have to borrow the money to pay for those subsidies.
What's so funny to me is, yes, it's harder to cut. I get it, right? And it's so easy to spend. So we just keep spending, because nobody wants to be the bad guy. At what point is anybody going to be the bad guy here and step up and go, you know what, we all have to get together. There's certain things like, hey, testing for butterfly sanctuaries for AIDS or something is maybe not the greatest thing. Maybe we should cut that $2 million out, right? Or, it blows me away how government waste is like so prevalent in everything. And then you get other people who say, well, the problem is, they're not collecting tax on tips anymore, and it's like, well, that would be so horrible for people to keep their own money, isn't it? I'm like, run on that thing, right?
Right, because especially the tax on tips things, most of the folks getting tips are not sitting there just stockpiling cash.
Right.
This is like usable. Right. This is money that goes right back into the economy.
Right.
And so, it's heartless in so many ways, and it just stems from more bad public policy. We were told that the cost of health insurance for families was just going to get way out of control, and that's exactly what it did under Obamacare.
Right.
They're like, just like I said before, it's like they said, well, it should go down. Your insurance will go down, and in fact, it'll probably save about $2,500 a year. But once again, it's the same old thing from politicians. Figures don't lie, but liars can figure.
Yeah.
And that's the way that they play numbers games, and they try to just manipulate people, and they start screaming about people need health care just to try to get more spending. And the insurance companies are making money, the medical industry is making money, and the taxpayers are going broke. So it's a good time to address this and to fix things, because the way things are now, the socialized crap is not fixing things. There's so many fees. People are being so stretched You know, it's like unless you have like a government job where you don't have to, where you get really rich benefits, a lot of people worry about it. I mean, there are obviously people in the private sector that have.
Well, you know what,
decent
and
finances,
you know, I feel for the Oreganders. You know, I really do. I mean, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place because you know their government can't, or their governor can't even say what's really going on, that it's their fault with the 40% increase in spending. And it's like no one is taking the blame here, which they never do in politics. I get it, left or right, but at some point we got to look at this and go, this is the fault of the people internally of that state.
Right, because it's uniquely their problem. I don't know if any other states have tax policy like that, but it's a ridiculous policy.
Yeah.
And so, they say that, I read something that says while the state's private sector job growth has slowed and population outmigration has accelerated, many businesses cite complex environmental rules, housing costs, rising crime as the main reasons for leaving or downsizing, and not the federal fiscal policy.
Yeah.
I mean, so much of that stuff to begin with, is still kicking in, but obviously, the budget forecasters this is budget forecasting, that they're saying, well, next year we're going to have serious problems. Well, maybe you should change the rules to get this to make your own tax policy.
Right, instead of basing off federal tax policy.
And then they can start taxing all the people who are earning tips, if they want.
Yeah, right. I mean, that run on that stuff, And then they're also, they are also blaming tariffs and everything on this too, which there has been some effect on tariffs as far as I can see, but it hasn't been as dramatic as what people are, baiting out there.
And they still have one of the highest corporate taxes in the country. So the highest corporate minimum tax in the country. But also, here's another thing. Federal reforms lower taxes for 80% of Oregon households. So this is the big, beautiful bill. Lower taxes for 80% of the citizens of Oregon, of the taxpayers of Oregon. So they're going to sit there and complain about it. And they want to vilify the federal government, but they really need to look in the mirror to fix their own problems.
Right. This is a state problem, not a federal problem.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So on a different topic.
Yeah. What you got?
Talking about money. Jamie's a captain. He's got a nice boat that he likes to cruise around in the tropics.
Right.
So, as a captain, there was recently a story that came up where these guys were off the Treasure Coast of Florida.
Treasure Coast, I saw this.
And they've been working on it for years.
Yeah.
And so, back in the 1700s, there was a Spanish fleet that was leaving Mexico for Spain with a whole bunch of
I remember
gold.
it well. I remember it being on CNBC. Yeah, they figured that one out. Yeah.
Pre-FCC, or I guess that doesn't apply to FCC. But so, anyways, here's the story. A team of divers from 1715 Fleet Queen's Jewels has discovered over 1,000 silver and gold coins valued at approximately $1 million from the wreck of a 1715 Spanish treasure fleet off Florida's Treasure Coast. The coins believed to have been minted in Mexico, Peru, Bolivia, and were part of a vast shipment of riches lost when a hurricane sank 11 Spanish galleons in July of 1715. The recovery was made during the 2025 summer salvage season. Let's see.
Are these considered doubloons?
Yeah, I know. That's one of the things I was wondering. So I guess here's some information on that. The haul included 1,000 silver coins, reales, and 5 gold coins, escudos, many of which still bear visible dates and mint marks, providing valuable historical data.
Doubloons,
which is really cool.
Say.
So, people always talk about salt water being obviously very bad, and so I guess on some of these precious metals, It's not so corrosive, I'm guessing. Or I don't know, have you ever dug a gold coin out of the salt water?
I wish I had. I wish I had.
So the interesting thing is that I was thinking, well, who gets to keep this? Because I've always heard like you hear about these things. They say, oh, there's this shipwreck over here or whatever, but you can't touch it because it's the federal, it's the property of the government, things like that.
Right. They won't know if it just falls into my wetsuit or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's like, oh yeah, I bought this at a coin show.
Yeah. Yeah. Wink, wink. Yeah. I get it.
So I asked Grok, my favorite reference
Grok.
points. Who gets to keep treasures of shipwrecks off the coast of Florida? Under Florida law, abandoned shipwrecks and their treasures, including archaeological artifacts and treasure troves in state waters, which are up to 3 nautical miles offshore. So evidently international law talks about like the federal rules being like up to 200 miles offshore, which I guess for places like the Bahamas or something that would get compromised because we can't claim Bahamian water, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, let's see. So this is reinforced by the Federal Abandoned Shipwrecks Act of 1988, which grants states like Florida jurisdiction over such sites in their territorial waters to protect historical and cultural resources. So what Florida does, once recovered...
So you're going to work your ass off to get this treasure, and someone's going to take it from you.
Well, so not so quickly. There are perks and there are incentives here. Good incentives, as long as you find something. Once removed, the treasures are divided. Florida officials review the inventory and retain up to 20%, only 20%, of the artifacts for public display in museums or research collections. The remaining 80%, depend on negotiations, goes to the salvage company and its subcontractors, which then can sell or keep their share. The process requires final approval from a federal judge to ensure compliance. Maybe they use a federal judge just to have like a nonpartisan, as opposed to a federal official who may be, on the state side or whatever.
Yeah, right.
So that's interesting. So that's a pretty good perk. I mean, that's worth.
Yeah, but I still think 20%. I mean, it's not like Florida did anything for it.
Yeah, no, but.
I'm like, again, government stepping in, taking your money.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like almost like mineral rights.
You didn't build that.
Yeah, right.
You didn't build that.
That water's Florida's land.
Right. I don't understand how those. That could be theirs, right?
So as a person who frequents the Bahamas...
Yes, I'll be there in 3 weeks, yeah.
I decided to check. So their rules. All shipwrecks and their contents in Bahamian waters, typically up to 12 nautical miles offshore, are considered the property of the Bahamian government. Commercial salvage has been heavily restricted since a government-imposed moratorium in 1992, driven by concerns over site damage and loss of cultural artifacts to private collections. So, to obtain a salvage permit, applicants must demonstrate expertise in marine archaeology, submit detailed exploration plans, and agree to non-destructive methods.
So they really have to be pros to do this.
So, then they say historically... Salvagers cap 75% of the fines with 25% going to the government. So it's not as bad as it originally sounded. So while you're there, if you see a little glimmer at the bottom of the sea floor,
just leave it.
And you feel like you want to dive down, and there's some like carcass, some wooden carcass of a boat sticking out of the sand.
Right. Right. Dove wrecks in the Bahamas,
You have.
Yeah, but
they're like.
They were. Well, I dove planes and things like that, and snorkeled around them, and.
I mean, it's a part of the Bermuda Triangle, right?
Yeah.
Sure, I mean, it's like, it's like Fort Lauderdale to Puerto Rico to Bermuda.
Yeah.
So that would include.
When was the last plane disappearance there, or boat disappearance? I'm wondering.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that goes down all the time, but But yeah, I'm not sure. They still always have lots of theories from magnetic fields.
Aliens.
Someone was just aliens. Someone was just telling me, what was it? They were talking about, maybe it was methane gas, like large methane gas bubbles that
Sure.
could come up, and if it's like a massive bubble where it could kind of like
Encapsulate the ship. And bring it
yeah,
down.
exactly, and then the ship goes down. That doesn't. I mean,
Seems a little far fetched.
there's some really. I mean, as far as the Bahama or the Bermuda Triangle and stuff, I mean, there's some crazy stories. But I know that they did. I remember, like, there was some like plane that went missing around 1945, and then there were like 5 warplanes that went out to go look for it or whatever.
Yeah.
And they all went down. And actually, I know that they were recently found at the floor of the
I saw that too.
ocean and stuff. And so, I mean, a lot of that's pretty shallow, I think, out there, right?
Oh,
I mean,
it's
most of the
totally
water's-
shallow. Yeah, I mean, there's places you got to wait till the tide changes because it can go up 2 to 4 feet or whatever.
Because
To get into, yeah.
I mean, Florida and the Bahamas used to be all one landmass during the Ice Age.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing something where these guys were going down to these blue holes. Is that what they call them?
Yeah.
Like those,
Yeah.
and they're like finding old fossils and stuff. And
Oh,
they're,
really?
today in modern Bahamas, there are no alligators and stuff, but they found alligator fossils.
Fossils, right.
Birds that are in Florida but are not in the Bahamas anymore, things like that. And so, yeah, it's obviously different areas. Obviously, it's like
Right.
during the Ice Age, even like Cape Cod, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard used to all be one big landmass.
Right.
One time, and when you drive around there, you watch your depth gauges, you see it's like 25, 30 feet. It's really not that deep.
Right. Not that bad.
In a lot of areas, and so but there was one cool story from the Bermuda Triangle. I think it was around 1970. Speaking of like pilots and stuff, you ever hear about this guy who's like flying, and all of a sudden like things got kind of like real swirly and everything,
Yeah.
and like all of a sudden he was like he was up by like Fort Lauderdale or something, but within like a couple minutes later he was like south of Miami or something. And it's just like he went through
Black hole or
some like
vortex
wormhole or some
something,
kind of
yeah.
vortex. That's like a crazy story. The guy, I think the
I
guy's
did
still
see
alive.
that somewhere.
And so
Do you remember the old Twilight Zone episodes?
yeah.
I think there was a Twilight Zone that was
Based
like
on
that too. Yeah, or
Okay.
based on that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting story. I mean, that's like there are a lot of stories of the Bermuda Triangle out there, and but that's one of the most important, one of the most interesting ones.
Yeah.
So,
No, I agree. I mean, that's a neat area, shallow but neat.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways you can wreck a boat there. That's for sure.
yeah, and so, but it's planes and boats, and so yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's something. If you're looking for something to do, you can go out.
Well, I was thinking about treasure hunting when I'm down there, but
you go out the compass, see if
I'm
there's
gonna
any like magnetic
UPS it
fields.
back to you, and I'm gonna say it's yours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'll take possession.
There is a place in the BVI that I've been told that you can find cannonballs, and I know you're not allowed to take them out of the BVI,
Mhm.
but I wanted to go dive that. Someone's
The
got the coordinates.
BVI being the British Virgin Islands.
Yes.
That
BVI.
probably has a very brutal antiquities department, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, yeah, right now they're having all sorts of problems with violence and things like
The
that.
BVI?
Yeah, they're shooting up bars and robbing people at the cruise port. I mean, it just
Wow.
last night there was a report of it.
That's amazing, because the BVI traditionally has been. I mean, the American Virgin Islands has a really bad reputation.
Oh yeah, especially St. Croix. Yeah.
But the BVI seemed like it was pretty mellow compared to it, but
Yeah, you would think, right?
because there aren't any
but-
there aren't any like huge urban centers. I mean,
Well, as long as you're in Tortola, I mean, that is the urban center. The whole of Tortola is.
yeah.
So, and I think it just goes around, and I mean, people just go around and there's just gang activity.
Mhm.
There was a gentleman, I'm not even sure to call him a gentleman, but a drug dealer that was shot down there who owned a bunch of companies. I mean, it's a rough hood, I actually have a lot of good friends down there, and I text them all the time. I'm like, you weren't in that bar, right?
So these guys are on the land because one of the things about the BVI is there aren't that many roads. I mean, it's a bunch of islands, so you need to be on a boat.
Yeah,
to, like,
I think as long as you're on the outskirts of the BVI, I think you're fine. But the Tortola itself is kind of a shit show right now.
Yeah. So, oh, that's too bad. I mean, it's a very special place with
great
a lot
area.
of wealth.
Yeah, great area. Actually, BVI or the Tortolas. There's a lot of wealth on Tortola, I've been told.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was curious.
Yeah.
Just to change topics here, I was curious to know who the largest lenders to the United States are, with their $37 trillion debt. And so I got a list.
Right.
And
what'd you find out?
So it's interesting. Let's start with the 10th biggest, the biggest lender to America.
Yeah.
Top holders of United States national debt. So Medicare Hospital Insurance Trust Fund. So that one throws me off because we were just talking about Social Security and how, like, at some point they tacked on Medicare taxes onto your Social Security. So it's like, right now between Social Security and Medicare, you're paying like 15.3%. But if you're a W-2 employee, your company's paying half of that. But so $300 billion is owed to the Medicare Trust Fund. Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So we keep taking the taxes and we just borrow it, snatch it right out, and use it for our expenses. And so, then number 9.
So Belgium. We're borrowing against it.
So Belgium.
So
0.43 trillion. So it's $430 billion.
Wow.
So that's a lot of money for a small country like Belgium, right?
Yeah, is Belgium that rich to hold our debt?
Right. And so here's the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of like
perfect place to hide your money, right?
Right, and this comes with a little asterisk, I think. So that's $440 billion, and the details say it often represents U.S. hedge funds and investment vehicles for domicile offshore.
Yeah, right.
So, a lot of these treasury bills and stuff that may be packaged into investment funds through the Cayman Islands, I guess, are getting that. State and local governments. So, obviously our state and local governments within the United States are $1.2 trillion.
Negative.
Yeah, so approximately, actually, that's a tilde sign there. For approximately.
I was like, wow, okay.
But so that's interesting. That's rated as number 7, but the next ones up actually are smaller numbers, but they are rated higher. So the big one that everyone thinks about is China, which is number 6 on the list, with $730 billion. So we owe China $730 billion, which is down. I think at one point it was up at like 1.2, 1.3 trillion. And I think over the last 5 years or so, maybe 4 years, during this COVID stuff, I think China was starting, like a lot of other countries, to not have as much faith in the U.S. dollar as we're running our printing presses.
Right.
And so they've trimmed that down quite a bit. I mean, if they've taken down almost maybe $500 billion, they've
Isn't that when they start devaluing our debt and everything? And
right, exactly. Especially, I mean, China was working on its BRICS, trying to create this common currency with the BRICS nations, if you know what that is: Brazil, Russia, India, China. And so, obviously, by them holding our debt, they're kind of stabilizing our dollar in certain ways, so they're probably loading it. But more so than China's the United Kingdom.
That kind of blows me away,
See, I always thought that they were the largest creditor to the United States, but it turns out that they're the second largest country, the second highest country, I should say. And so, $0.9 trillion, so $900 billion in foreign debt, they're owed to the United Kingdom. let's see, mutual funds and ETFs. So that's domestic. That's when people are obviously buying T-bills and things like that domestically.
Right.
$4.5 trillion though. So, this is the thing that, when we talk about, and I'm no expert at this, so don't be an idiot and not listen to what I say necessarily. But when we talk about this stuff, when we talk about T-bills like 10 years, and these are the types of things that affect mortgage rates,
Right.
as opposed to the short-term overnight rates that the Fed just lowered. The bank-to-bank type of loans and stuff like that. These are the creditors that really affect. This is the market that affects these mortgage notes in a lot of ways, and a lot of times. T-bills and the overnight interest rates have like this positive relationship. When one
Right.
goes up,
Right.
the other one goes up, and conversely. So, anyways, but Japan, number 3, the third largest
Right.
creditor of the United States government,
Right.
$1.15 trillion, and I mean that's
Central banks and institutions.
these are huge numbers here, and let's see. So it makes them a good ally.
How are we not insolvent?
Right, exactly. And a lot of times the United States, there's so many other countries too. When you look at the percentage of GDP, I don't have it in front of me. Maybe for the next issue or episode. I mean, I'll bring the numbers. But when you look at national debt compared to the country's GDP, some of these numbers are just ridiculous.
Yeah, right.
A lot of Western Europe and a lot of America.
Right.
So okay, then we get
This is what gets me, right?
We get to Al Gore's favorite, the Social Security Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund. So we talk about this lockbox. That's like because I remember 25 years ago, people were saying, "Oh, you're spending all
Put
the
it in a
Social
box.
Security.
We lock it away.
We're going to put it in this lockbox, and no one's going to touch it. But what's in this lockbox is a bunch of IOUs." So we talked about.
They look like this,
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So we talked about how there are these, Social Security is going insolvent, and one of maybe the Social Security Trust Fund comes knocking, saying, we need our $2.4 trillion back, so we can send out checks next month. So
sure.
And then the number one largest creditor right now
The
is the Federal Reserve.
Right.
And I bet 5 years ago that wasn't the case because, one of the things when a lot of these mortgage rates went way low is when we started to spend all this money for COVID, and the Federal Reserve was buying United States Treasuries. And so now, these banks, the Federal Reserve is the country's largest creditor, which, I guess you can have mixed feelings about that, but still.
Yeah, that always blows me away because you think the Federal Reserve is a government-run organization, but it's not.
It's not. There's influence from the federal government, obviously.
Right.
Trump wanted to can obviously Jerome Powell. He wanted to get rid of that other lady from Ohio, or wherever she was from. But yeah, so these are big numbers, and this federal debt is exactly why we see gold going over $4,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought a gold bullion like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
For it was like $2,000 or $2,100. And it's just this little tiny coin, heavy.
Right.
It was really heavy too for
Right.
like its size. But over a couple of years, you see that double in value.
That's crazy.
And then you look, and people talk about, obviously Bitcoin. Bitcoin's
Right.
huge, and they think it's just going to keep on going. And a few years ago, even before the Biden administration and Gary Gensler was running the SEC, there were huge hopes for crypto back then. I think back then Trump was not on board with it. He's on board with it today, obviously.
Right.
Anyways, but these stores of value, these are the things that people are taking their money to because they're concerned about the United States dollar.
I agree. I think there's no gold standard anymore, so
Right?
it just kind of
It's just the full faith and credit of the United States government, which
it's like the Wild
can't
West.
balance a budget.
Yeah, and none of them can get together on making a decision.
And as soon as you started talking austerity, then the political groups get wound up and they start causing chaos. I mean, it's like what happened in Greece a few years ago, right? When they were talking about austerity. It's easy to spend the money. It's hard to cut it. And so, I've seen some politicians take a lot of grief because they say, the federal government wants to give you this, if it's a state or local politician.
Sure.
And they say, no, thank you, because that's only good for 2 years. Then I got to fund the cash that comes afterwards.
Right.
And then I'm going to get beat up after that. So if we don't start with it, we don't have long-term problems. And so we saw certain states handle things that way with Obamacare, with the subsidies and the exchanges and stuff.
Sure.
And they came out better. So.
Right.
So that's that. But yeah, wasn't really planning on talking much about Social Security.
Yeah, right.
It was just interesting to see who's owning all this American debt.
Well, it kind of scares me. I think we're kind of at a nobody wants to make a decision. Nobody wants, of course, nobody wants to give up, subsidies for other people. Nobody wants to get hurt here. But at what point can we cut things that don't make sense too?
Right.
And it's like everyone seems to think everything makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not logical.
Right, and some of the stuff, especially when you talk about some of that U.S. aid stuff, just like that $1 billion that Joe Biden offered to the Ukraine for his quid pro quo about firing that one guy who was investigating the corruption back in 2015 or whatever it was. The U.S. aid money, it did some good stuff. It did some very negative stuff too, and very wasteful stuff. And I think some of our adversaries, once again, they're always out there just trying to find the people to gaslight and get them protesting. And then the media shows up, and then it looks like a big shit show, and then politicians get scared. But I mean, at some point you got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And right now, when they're talking about borrowing more money to continue subsidies for Obamacare, that makes no sense.
Right.
It means that we have to fix this. And I remember Paul Ryan, he was a big advocate for interstate competition between insurance companies and how the interstate competition.
Yeah. It used to be you could only buy insurance in your state.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you once again, if you have competition, you can usually you can help the market out. That's not the silver bullet that'll fix it, but it's a step in the right direction. And so I think one of the best things for people in healthcare insurance is our HSAs. 20 years ago,
Health savings accounts.
I had an HSA, and it was great. So it really puts the market forces, it puts the consumerism, the consumer economics at play, because you pay a high deductible,
right,
but you get to put a larger payment every month into this health savings account. So, the first 12 months or whatever, you got to hope that you're healthy and not sick, and you build up this reserve.
Sure.
And then once you do start needing health care, the money's in there, it's in an interest-bearing account, and you can use that money. But you can decide, right now if it's I only have to pay $15 copay, so, I got an itch on my back, I think I'll go get that checked out. That kind of mentality drives healthcare costs up.
Right. Well, and the wasteful spending about going in on a cold and all that other stuff, it buries us.
Right, exactly.
It buries us.
And so if we could put market forces at play,
right,
more people had HSAs. I think I loved having the HSA. Because eventually, at one point, we ended up changing. My wife was working at a hospital, and they had their own program, so we didn't need that anymore. But for years and years, we had all this money in this HSA.
Right.
Every copay that we had was just written through that. We didn't have to pay any medical expenses for a long time.
Sure. Right.
Out of pocket versus from that HSA savings account. So that's the best way. I mean, that just puts the reality in place, so people are thoughtful. It's not like, this blank check mentality.
Yeah, you're right. That you're definitely going to cut your spending, and you're not going to go to the doctor for a cold.
Right.
You're going to be like, it's a cold. I'll wait till I'm like a little sicker or whatever. I get it, because it comes out of your own pocket until.
Yep. And it's your money. It's regulated. But if you need glasses or whatever you need, it's there for you when you need it.
Right.
Right. So
that does make a lot of sense. It's a good point. I mean, there's a lot of government programs that need to be changed or fixed or amended, or at what point are they going to get off the ball, both parties, and do what they're telling, do what they're paid to do, right?
Right. So that comes to it. I mean, these politicians, as we're in a situation now where these politicians are going to have to make some tough choices, and that's what they started doing earlier with Doge. Some could say, well, it was a little, you need to take a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer. You can argue about that because there's certain things that, make you raise your eyebrows, but
sure.
The intent obviously was good, and we've got Social Security drying up. We've got Obamacare collapsing, under its own weight. And, at some point you guys make tough decisions and say, well, if I don't get reelected, I don't get reelected, but I'm going to save the country.
Right.
That's a good thing about presidential term limits. Obviously, Trump's he's in until January 2029.
Right.
And then he's done. And so, for these career politicians who want to stay in office for a long time, as long as, I think the rule is like, as long as, they look at it as careers instead of the Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
Right.
And I think as long as you're there for like 6 years,
that's the one thing that I want to press here, right? Is there's two things that are corrupt here, right? The money in politics, and getting these guys out within a certain amount of time period so they don't become corrupt, and they don't start, they don't become the Nancy Pelosi's husband who gets all the data and becomes a multi-billionaire based on, insider trading tips, right?
Right.
It's like, at what point are we going to hold these people accountable and say, what? And it's funny because they could vote on this shit themselves, but none of them want to vote on it, right? I'd love to put the vote up there and go, so figure out which ones are the ones who aren't going to vote for term limits or taking the money out of it.
Especially, that's when they get the president. I'm going to vote president.
President, right.
It's not yay or nay. But, it's, I think it was Anna Paulina Luna. She was, I think it was her, she was talking, when I first got to D.C., I was so excited, and, then they sit you down, they're like, okay, this is how it works around here. It's like them and it's us. You can't do anything to help them or whatever. And, it's like, and then the donors, the special interests come knocking, and, people get polluted right away. There's a benefit in a lot of things to like being at a job for a long time. But I think the DC politician is the one case where you do more harm by sticking around. Look at these, like Chuck Schumer's been there forever.
Oh my God!
There have been so many cases where these guys. Look at Joe Biden. He was elected around 1970 or something when he. These guys stick around forever. It's a way of life. They live in these like schmoozing circles where they're treated like royalty.
Right.
And so, and that's obviously that's not what it's for. So.
No, and but if we don't vote them out, they're going to keep running this thing, So, yeah. But, all good points today for sure, and it's like, like, don't be an idiot. I mean, this stuff it's evident what needs to be done.
Right.
But they won't do it.
And we need enough people to say, we're Americans first, and we need to do what's best for the country, as opposed to what's best for certain groups. We want to help everyone. We want everyone to be in good shape.
Absolutely.
Well, we all have to work hard to make sure we have a good country.
Right. Yeah. But, well, what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say.
Another episode of Don't Be an Idiot. Don't be an idiot. Please like and subscribe and tune in.
Real quickly, do you have a special mug today? We didn't talk about your mug.
Oh yeah, my Porsche mug.
The Porsche.
Yeah, I've always been a Porsche enthusiast.
Do you know any people who have Porsches?
Well, yeah, I know a few. I have a few. Yeah, I actually have one myself, but yeah.
That he doesn't like to drive.
Yeah, I just don't drive. You know what? I'm just too cautious, and the thing is, it's like, I think it needs to go up for sale.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So this was an expensive car. You could say the price if you want.
Nope.
But it was an expensive car, and but you can buy a Porsche for what? Can you buy a Porsche for like 60 grand, 70 grand
Sure.
also?
Yeah.
So what's the big difference? I mean, is it the power?
Well, this one's kind of like a race car.
Yeah.
So, and I had some aspirations of taking on the track. Although, if you guys don't know, I'm on a race team, a champ car race team, which is a whole lot of fun for like a little bit of money. Well, and it's still expensive. Don't get me wrong. Any kind of racing is expensive, but it isn't. It isn't NASCAR. It isn't IndyCar. It's champ car. Mm-hmm. And these are kind of jalopies. And we actually just had a car that was hit. And we have two cars that now we rotate in and out. But I bought the Porsche to track it. And
is this street legal?
It's street legal, yeah. It's just real fast and real insane. And it's almost too insane for me.
And so it's faster than your average Porsche that you see on the road.
Yeah, for the most part, right. It's a GT3, which it's not a GT3 RS. I got it before those were even out. But thing is, I drive it on the road and people film it, and I'm scared they're gonna run into it. So I'm like, I've just left it here, and.
So you don't park it in the middle of like a tight parking spot at Walmart?
No, yeah, you know what? And it doesn't matter what car I'm driving. I never park it in a tight parking spot. I always park at the end. But you can always count on people if you park out in the parking lot, like all the way to the end. You can always count on two idiots parking next to you, right? And it's like, and my wife and I joke about this all the time. It doesn't matter if I'm driving my daily driver, driving the Porsche, I will park it all the way out. And every time we come out, I'm like, look at that. Again, two more people parking next to me.
So have you taken this Porsche on the racetrack?
I have not. Yeah.
So you don't know how fast it can go?
No. I haven't pushed the limits up.
You have the specs that tell you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the specs are like 200 miles an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I don't know if I'd feel comfortable doing 200 miles an hour. Maybe in a straight line.
If it's a very long road. Like Eisenhower, when Eisenhower was developing the freeway system, expressways, interstate. I think he calculated every so many miles you have to have a 5 mile straight run.
Oh, really?
Just for military planes to be able to land or whatever.
Oh, really?
That works out.
That's an interesting concept.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So militarily strategic way to design roads and stuff. Obviously, I'm sure they had to buy land or condemn land to take it over and stuff. But.
Right.
So
don't get me wrong, I've loved my Porsches since I was a kid. I'd like to go back to the old Porsche I had, which was like, if it got dented, I didn't really care. I mean, I cared, don't get me wrong, but not as much as I care about this one. And I'm like, don't dent that or whatever. Yeah.
I had a friend who had like a 63 or something.
Sure.
And he picked me up, and it had this cool tick to the engine. Yeah. Didn't really have any power.
They're now, a 63 would be like a 959, which now the value of those have gone up. And if you look at Porsches, one of the reasons why I buy them is the value never seems to spiral down. It spirals down to a point, and then it starts working its way back up.
Unless you spend a lot of time on the racetrack.
Yeah,
or Walmart parking lot.
Or beat it, right, exactly. Walmart. Yeah, well,
talk about Walmart.
That's another thing. I don't ever go to Walmart, so, but, I don't really go to Target either, It's like, I don't know what my favorite store is there.
He shops online, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I'd say.
Right.
But.
Well, good. Thank you for watching today.
Yeah, again, like and subscribe. Let us know how we're doing. Also, Please throw out some topics. We're all ears here.
Have a good day.
Bye.